How do the Charlotte Hornets stack up against the other teams in the leagues when it comes to futures rankings? We'll get to that, specifically talk about Brandon Miller, and provide any Kai Jones updates. All today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcasts, and that does include YouTube. I do want to say this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On to get started. That's Doug Branson. Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on Sports Radio 92.7 FM every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. And it's here, folks. The Daily Pod is back. We will be with you daily going into the NBA regular season, post-NBA regular season, off-season. We'll have the 1.5 month break, and it's going to be a long way from now, though. We'll be with you pretty much daily up until July and early August. We're in for the long haul, baby. How are you feeling, Doug?
Well, I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm unwell.
I know.
I'm feeling a little bit.
This is daunting. The fact that it's going to be a long time until we go 3 days a week, but we're in it for the long haul again.
Well, I'm excited. I mean, if everybody stays healthy, I mean, I was excited last season when we went daily because everything looked beautiful and we looked like we had a LaMelo Ball All-NBA season on deck. And so, yeah, I mean, you never know how seasons are going to turn out. But right at this moment, yeah, physically I'm feeling unwell. But mentally, emotionally, I'm ready to watch some basketball. I'm ready to start up Every Hornets Boxscore and all of the notebook series that I did last season. I'm ready. I just hope everyone stays healthy.
Okay.
Healthier than me right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I hope everybody stays healthier than you and healthier than they were last year because they might have been the most unhealthy team. I don't remember some of the injury stats there. I think, if you provide context where LaMelo was in and out of the lineup, yeah, maybe he played 36 games, but going in and out, and then we, of course, saw a bunch of people that missed a lot of time last year. So who are the young guys, right? Who are the guys that can allow us to see brighter days in the future, whether it be this year or really specifically within the next 3 seasons? Bleacher Report put together future rankings for all teams in the NBA. And remember when Bobby Marks would do this? And 2 years ago, when they were the league pass team, they started to make make up some ground on some of the teams towards the top of that category in the league. And then the past 2 years, they've gone right back down. Andy Bailey of Bleacher Report has the Charlotte Hornets ranked 26th, Doug. And here's what he writes. Things were pretty bleak for the Hornets in 2022 and 23, but they won 43 games the season before and have potential all over the roster. Over the last 2 seasons, LaMelo Ball has averaged over 21 points, almost 8 assists, and 6.5 rebounds per game. He's also averaged over 3 threes and 1.5 steals. He shot 38% from deep. He's already a star and could be a top 10 to 15 player in 3 years. If Brandon Miller is the kind of high-volume floor spacer he has the potential to be, and Mark Williams develops into the prototypical rim runner and protector, Charlotte could be in pretty good shape. So I'll tell you this. Reading that breakdown after seeing the 26th ranking, actually pretty positive, Doug. Actually pretty hopeful because of your second overall pick in Brandon Miller, higher than our boy Matt Moore on LaMelo Ball, potentially being a top 10 and top 15 player, and Mark Williams, you and I both love with what he did last year. What do you make of that write-up in the ranking?
I mean, I think it's dead on. If you look at the teams that are around them, so Washington is last, Chicago next, Portland, then Toronto, then Charlotte. Ahead of them are the Clippers because their major pieces are old and injured, and what's next for them after that? San Antonio and then Detroit. So it's a lot of teams that are most of those teams are projected to finish towards the bottom of the rankings, and it's a long way up for a lot of these teams. But for Charlotte, there are a lot of ifs on this roster. If LaMelo can stay healthy, if Brandon Miller can reach his ceiling, but that's going to be years away. And so I think when you're looking at future rankings, you're going to put teams that are potentially 2 to 3 years away if a number of things go right, you're going to put those guys towards the bottom of the ranking. And, it's all about climbing up, making progress each season. And that's the problem that the Hornets have had over the past couple of seasons. They haven't been able to make that progress because of injuries, but also I would say because of a lack of veteran leadership, because of a lack of creativity in the offseason to provide this team with some pieces that aren't such big ifs. And they've had a lot of off the court issues that have held them back. I mean, they, honestly, off that 43 win season, you would think that this Charlotte team would be a lot higher on this list right now than they are, but they aren't because of all the factors that I just listed.
Well, and I guess based on some criteria, I thought Charlotte would be even lower, especially with some of the teams that they finished in front of. But Andy says, how will the NBA look in 3 years based on contract situations, upside for individual players, and what we've already seen from teams around the league? Here's a look into the crystal ball for the 2026 power rankings. So I guess with all of that, that's how he comes up with the Charlotte Hornets being 26th. But if you look at some of the teams they finished in front of, Detroit, who does have talent. Yeah, they've been tanking for quite some time. But if you just wanted to go young potential star for young potential star, Detroit's got quite a few. Jalen Duren, we still really like, even if we like Mark Williams a lot right now. You have Jaden Ivey, who could be very good. Cade Cunningham, even if everybody's kind of iffy, that's the idea. You have a couple of lottery tickets there. Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe for Portland. They finished in front of them. They finished in front of the Spurs, where they still have some younger players. Oh, yeah, and then they just drafted Wemby. So it goes to show you that even Andy, despite some of those other stars, potential stars in the making, is picking the Charlotte Hornets because of Mark Williams, Brandon Miller, and LaMelo. Not to mention, we know that Mitch Kupchak has done a pretty good job with some of these second-round picks. So if you want to bring in, by any chance, JT Thor being a rotation player. I know we're starting to stretch a little bit. Right. Like just any second round pick. Thor was the example. Then maybe they can start to build this foundation and you can feel pretty good about it in 3 years. Maybe.
I mean, the big X factor there that I don't know that Andy Bailey Andy Bailey did the Brandon Miller rankings, but
okay.
Whoever did these Bleacher Report future rankings, I'll figure that out in a minute. We'll give him credit in the next segment. But whoever did these Bleacher Report future rankings,
it's Andy. I thought so. Yeah.
So we're doing a double dose of Bailey. Got it.
Yeah, that's right.
I could use
double
that right
shot
now,
of Bailey's.
Yeah,
love it in the morning.
Probably help me at this point. I don't know that Andy took this into account, but the big X factor that I'm not sure that any of these other teams that I listed that are around them in these future rankings have to take into consideration is a new ownership group. And two individuals that could invest heavily in this team in the future, or say, all right, we've got what we need and we're going to play it cheap like we always have and just keep going as we always have. So that's a big X factor. I think Mark Williams is the underrated piece here of this puzzle, because it's easy to look at LaMelo Ball and say, well, if he goes all NBA, then the trajectory of this team changes. And Brandon Miller, if he reaches his like Jason Tatum ceiling, well, then all bets are off. But Mark Williams is sitting there being a piece that this franchise has not had in a long, long time. And that's a potential dominant center that could help facilitate, can help allow LaMelo Ball to reach that potential, could help Brandon Miller reach that, and provide this team with a defensive presence that could elevate them to a playoff position, which is what all of these players, LaMelo, Brandon, all these players, they need playoff experience. And once people can see how they perform on that level, then, the Andy Baileys of the world are going to start moving Charlotte up into these rankings. But if they continue to finish outside of the playoff window, then they're going to remain at the bottom of these types of lists.
Also, Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, those guys are younger. Who knows about Miles? You just locked in PJ for a little while. So those are guys that can help those other players, too, become stars, because they're at least PJ's not going to get in the way of stardom for anybody, right? Miles might, depending on how long he'd be here. Maybe he would overtake that. But PJ is just going to be here to make the smart pass, shoot threes. And Miles, still a younger player, not the youngest anymore, but so I think that's something that has to be in consideration.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to I don't know if he's the youngest, but we can go to one of the younger players in the upcoming segment next on Locked On Hornets.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Here we are talking futures rankings. We'll specifically mention Brandon Miller and where he ranks in terms of ceiling compared to the other 2023 NBA draft class members. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. It's so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, even more than that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets coming up next. All right, Doug, so the whole team ranked 26th when you're looking 3 years ahead. What about Brandon Miller and in terms of him reaching his ceiling? What are the chances that he could reach his ceiling as much as anybody else that was selected in this past draft class? And what are the chances he hits that? So Andy Bailey, our boy, double shot of Bailey. Here's the second one. Get ready, folks. He has Brandon Miller number 5 in that. So Brandon Miller is behind Victor Wembanyama, the Thompson twins, and Scoot Henderson. And so here's what he writes. Thanks to his shooting, Brandon Miller is probably in the conversation for the highest floor of any prospect. During his lone season at Alabama, he took 7.5 threes per game, high volume and high percentage with 38.4% of those attempts going in. Also shot 86% at the free throw line. If he develops into a little more than a floor spacer with forward size, he should be able to help a team's bottom line for years to come. But a few other numbers from college suggest there's a chance he might be more than just the floor spacer. He averaged 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks per 100 possessions. And those aren't huge numbers at the college level, but they're at least worth noting. And at 20 years old, there's plenty of time for Miller to explore those areas of his game. What do you make of Andy Bailey's ranking Brandon Miller top 5 in terms of ceiling behind the Thompson twins, Wemby, and Scoot Henderson?
So I was okay with the future ranking, 26 for the Charlotte Hornets. I am far less okay with this ranking because you look at it, you go, wow, Brandon Miller, top 5, great. But there really, there weren't a ton of like high ceiling guys in this draft, right? I mean, the only other player that you could even, I think, consider putting in this list would be the guy that rode Wemby's coattails into the top 10 of the draft, which is Bilal Coulibaly. Like you just look at the physical gifts that Coulibaly has, and you go, okay, this guy could be, a sneak ceiling player here. But everybody else, I mean, Anthony Black, Jarris Walker, Taylor Hendricks, Kason Wallace, Jet Howard, none of those guys you're really going to consider, I think, high ceiling players.
Weirdly enough, maybe Cam Whitmore after falling because of the injury. I know people loved Cam Whitmore.
I love Cam Whitmore, yeah. But obviously there's something going on there. But anyway.
The injury stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so you can look at it and go, well, he made top 5, but top 5 is really pretty much the bottom of this kind of ceiling list. And I just think that Brandon Miller possesses so many things on both ends of the floor. And when I look at guys in terms of like how high the ceiling can get, I think you have to look at players that can play on both ends, that can do it two-way. And that's what Brandon Miller provides you with. And the Thompson twins, they have so much room to grow on the shooting, but that's always dangerous. Bobcats fans know that with MKG. Guys that come in with broken jump shots, it's a big if that's ever going to get to a point where they're not a liability on that end. Now, yes, the Thompson twins are super athletic. They're going to drive that basketball all day and all night. But, I think shooting, Walker, it's still, it's pretty important in this league right now. And if they don't have it and they never get it, that's going to severely limit what they can do. Brandon Miller already has that. And he's willing to be a good to great defender in this league. I just think you have to have him at least 3 in front of the Thompson twins. And then I think you can have the argument versus Scoot that we really had all summer long.
We didn't have an argument about it.
But we argued with other people about it for sure.
Yeah. I think Wemby number 1 is clear. So you can't argue that. I think I'm not as mad about this as you are. And I think the reason is because the athleticism, I think that's what Andy is taking into effect here. And it's not that Brandon is completely non-athletic, but the Thompson twins, Scoot Henderson, are all freaks. And then Wemby is the guy that could be one of the best prospects we've ever seen. And I think that's what's being taken into account. And so when people talk about ceiling, yes, it depends on how you define that. I think what people are mentioning with ceiling is Brandon Miller has a skill right now that can be learned, but he's already learned it and mastered it in shooting, right? The Thompson twins theoretically could be very good shooters, But the odds of them ever reaching Brandon Miller status on that are not going to happen. That's true for Scoot too. The fact that, the odds of Scoot being as good of a shooter as Brandon Miller, the odds are against that as well. But Brandon Miller can't be taught the type of Thompson twins athleticism as well as even Scoot Henderson. I think that's the thought process here. No, it's not the end all be all. If you are 100% certain that Brandon Miller is going to even add more to his game than just being the floor spacer, then yeah, that's where he is going to have the ceiling, right? Taking guys off of the dribble, being someone that in a half court possession, things get bogged down. There's 5 seconds to go on the shot clock. Give it to Brandon, and even if he doesn't blow by you, he's still going to get to his spot, a la Middleton, Gordon Hayward. Or is there that Jason Tatum? Is there that Paul George high-end comp that people were giving Brandon Miller? I think that's the type of ceiling that he could reach that helps him get there. But if you're talking about just overall athleticism, I think that's the key thing that Bailey is focused on. So I understand it. But you're right, Doug. It does seem to be not ignoring, but not emphasizing some of the other skills that Brandon Miller does bring to this team as the second overall pick.
Listen, if you want to do a top 5 freaks list, then fine. Do a freaks list. And then Wemby and the Thompson twins, and you can get freaky with those guys. There's no doubt about it. I've watched the tape. I understand how freaky the Thompson twins can get. But this is, to me, this is not a top 5 freaks list. This was a top 5 ceilings list. And I think Brandon Miller, pretty much everyone is in agreement that Brandon Miller's ceiling is some level of like Jason Tatum or like prototypical NBA super wing. And I think that's a pretty damn high ceiling. And I think he has all the tools right now necessary to reach it. All he has to do is get stronger and continue to hone those skills and get under the bright lights and perform. And I just think he should be higher on this list.
I will say defensively, Asar Thompson looks very, very good. But defensively, Brandon Miller is the smart player. We saw him in Summer League. And that's what I liked about Bailey putting some of that stuff there after the shooting. It's, can he build upon that with some of the other skills and the stats that he mentioned per 100 possessions in college? Yeah, that's the stuff that, okay, can that come at a higher volume just like the shooting was already in college? So that'll be interesting to see.
That's fine. If you want to do Mutant League basketball, okay, if you want to do Circus Freak Show, Andy Bailey. I got my, you know what? I was good with Andy Bailey in segment 1. Now I've got my eyes on Andy Bailey. This list is fraudulent. This is not a ceilings list. This is a freaks list. And I'm not going to have it. Not on this show. Not while I'm feeling this poor. Andy Bailey caught me on a bad day. I'm not feeling well, and I'm taking it out on Andy Bailey and this freaky list. And I think Brandon Miller, if you want a basketball player, if you want a player that can perform on both ends of the floor, that's what Brandon Miller's going to do. That's reaching your ceiling.
Kai Jones is a freak. Kai Jones athletically, there's not a lot messing with that.
No doubt about that.
All right, let's go to the next segment. Coming up next on Locked On Hornets.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Any more updates on Kai Jones? What have we been seeing from him lately? And the big question is this made a big deal all for nothing? We'll talk about that coming up in the last segment of Locked On Hornets. All right, Doug, Kai Jones. Look, I have not seen, after he called out Mark Williams, we discussed that, after he called out Nick Richards in response to fans tweeting or posting to him on Instagram. He talked about Nick Richards and Mark Williams, why they were worse basketball players than he was. Then he started calling out cooking Prime Diesel. Yes, that's right. Somebody asked him, well, you're not as good as Shaq, right? He's like, no, I would cook Prime Diesel is what he said. I love every word choice there. Then he said he would beat LeBron one-on-one. So when he talks about Shaq and LeBron, it goes to such an insincere place where it's like, okay, now is he just ultimately trolling us? If so, I guess the joke lands for you. I don't get it if everything's just going nutso, even more so. Like, I don't know. Is there anything to make of him saying he'd cook Prime Diesel if he'd beat LeBron one-on-one? What are the latest thoughts from you, Doug, as far as Kai Jones is concerned?
Well, I think he went even one level up from Prime Diesel he went to Prime Jordan. Someone on Twitter.
I did not see the Jordan comment. There's too many. I can't keep up with all the stars that he's calling out now. I thought it ended with LeBron and Shaq. I didn't even see the MJ comment.
He's tweeting a lot, and he's replying. He's replying a lot. Look, if you're listening to the show and you've just been dying for a player to respond to your tweet, I mean, Kai is providing it for you.
No, we just endorsed it. Oh no.
I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying if that's what you. In fact, I'm anti-endorsing it because I've said this whole time. The biggest problem, because I don't know what's going on in Kai Jones's life beyond what I'm seeing here in the posts and the Instagram lives. Okay, so I'm not going to comment on any of that, and I'm not really even going to lend any credence to any of the rumors. Okay, but what I will say is that what worries me about the only thing that I can attach myself to that I can say yes, I understand this and I'm worried about it is that he's responding to all these trolls, that he's letting that into his life, that he's consuming that stuff, because I just think that's not healthy for any individual, but certainly someone that is in the spotlight like Kai is as a professional athlete. But yes, in this tweet, someone says, one-on-one, do you think you can beat Prime Jordan? And Kai Jones says 100%. Now, in defense of Kai Jones, we don't know which Jordan. It could have been Prime DeAndre Jordan. I think Kai Jones could take Prime DeAndre Jordan, maybe.
I don't think so, but yeah, maybe.
Right, well,
maybe.
I'm just trying to help him out. But he also, that's not the only Michael that he compared himself to. He also compared himself to Michael Jackson.
Oh, okay.
So
there's that as well.
There you go. I think really at this point, the only place he has to go at this point is the Beatles route and just compare yourself to Jesus Christ. I mean, I think that's the only one left. Well. The only place that he can get to. Look, all of this is odd, but will it all blow over when we get to training camp? Because we are in a summer mood still. We're coming out of it. We're getting into fall. Football's back. It came at that perfect moment, like right before I think football really kicked into high gear, and people could pay attention. But like once training camps kick off for basketball, like all this stuff goes away. And has he really ruined any relationships, or are people like, well, that's just Kai being Kai, or maybe they have inside information about what's going on in his life that would account for all of this. And they go, look, we're just going to give Kai the benefit of the doubt. Let's get the basketball and let's go hoop. Hopefully that's what the situation ends up being.
Yeah, this is not some monster storyline heading into the season, but I don't know if it'll just die completely because Kai Jones, as you mentioned, he just keeps responding. He just keeps tweeting, and it's nonstop. And you're right. I've seen some of the more benign tweets where there's just a bunch of emojis and, self-uplifters on Twitter. That's all I've seen. That's all fine. But when you're calling out players and there's the potential that you continue to do that, then it's going to be somewhat of a story. And look, camaraderie, yeah, it's not like we say they have to like each other, but I just wonder if there's even the respect level there too. I mean, if you're Mark Williams and you're Nick Richards coming in, you're probably not thrilled with it. Mark had the funny response with the 50 Cent meme there after the video of him, and I believe it was Floyd Mayweather. But like he did the right thing, honestly. He acknowledged it, he made a joke out of it, and he moved on. But it's just all so bizarre, Doug. It's also odd. I'm not saying that it's so locker room damaging, but I don't think it's going to be something that just completely goes away because Kai Jones won't let it die. He won't. Yeah. He keeps tweeting. He keeps going to, and he's still involved. This isn't a case where, hey, where's Kai? He's off doing his own thing and he's not showing up for practice or anything. No, we know where he is. Hell, he's posted it on Instagram Live. Like, we know where he is. And that's what makes this all so bizarre. It's just, it's so weird. So
it's funny. You want your young players to be delusionally confident. You just don't want them airing it out on social media constantly. You want them, just sort of like having that confidence and then kind of feeding that beast and then going out there and performing on the court. You don't want to see that delusional confidence, but that's what we're seeing. I mean, Kai Jones is leaking delusional confidence all over, the town square. And I think that's what is hitting people in an odd way. I don't know if you saw this as well, but there was some kind of parody account that tweeted a video of Kai Jones playing at Texas, like a Texas highlight reel. And this is a account called Ball Don't Stop. but I think it's a parody of maybe a real account. I don't know. But anyway, this tweet says the Hornets' lackadaisical development has been the real reason Kai Jones hasn't made an all-star team yet. And then it goes on, but I don't need to read the rest of it. The interesting part is that Isaiah Thomas, former Charlotte Hornet Isaiah Thomas, replied to this tweet and said, "Stop it. It has nothing to do with Hornets development. I was there and seen how legit the team development was. It's a lot of other things going on. Kai is good, but you have to be good every day, disciplined and attentive to detail. Young players lack that to get on the floor consistently." So there's a little, I don't know if you saw that, Walker, but there's a little veteran Isaiah Thomas piece coming in and saying, nothing wrong with the Hornets team player development system. And that's not, you can't, and again, this was a kind of a trolly tweet that he was replying to, and everybody got in the mentions was like, "Hey, IT, this was not real." But interestingly, something that was a parody thing gets IT to say something about the Hornets, pulling back the curtain a little bit and saying, look, player development, nothing wrong with that. But we look at, I think a lot of, whether you're a Kai Jones stan or just a young player stan or a Hornets fan, you look at the highlight reels for not only at Texas, but you look at Kai Jones, what he does in Summer League and what he did in the few opportunities that he had last season. You go, man, there's so much there. There's so much that he can do that guys his size shouldn't be able to do. What's the holdup? And IT is sitting here telling you there are some things happening behind the scenes that coaches look at and go, I can't give that guy time over this other guy who is doing things the right way.
And it's only confirmed, right? We know all that already. And again, it's not like this is unforeseen. When he was selected, we all knew it was going to be a big old project with Kai Jones. We knew this, right? And here we are going into his third season. It's not crazy. It's just when you try to convince yourself that you're in it for the 3-year long haul waiting to see. Now, he hasn't improved, right? You want to see shades of improvement, and that's the real issue. So, no, that is understood. But we did know that there was a big old possibility that he didn't, that he wouldn't improve. And that's how it's played out so far, to the point where Mark Williams comes in as a first-round pick, immediately passes him as a more valuable center. And now here we are. I mean, I know we joke about my love for James Najee, but like defensively, Doug, there's no one in the world, right, that trusts Kai Jones defensively more than James Najee. There's just not like that. So now you're talking about, I think it was Nada, the way he put it. Najee is deciding to play with Greensboro and Hornets deciding to keep Najee away. Jones is from, not even being on this roster. Like that's a possible thing. So we'll see how it plays out. I hope the best for him wherever it's here with Charlotte or to a different team. But man, I wouldn't doubt him going to a different team at all right now. Final thoughts from you.
We have been talking about Kai Jones a lot. Probably more than his statistical contributions would warrant.
That's right.
But because we've been talking about him a lot, some of the Kai Jones commenters that don't really watch the show a ton have come out of the woodwork because the algorithm serves it up to them and they feel the need to comment on something that they haven't watched a lot. And all of the comments seem to have a common thread, which is that the Hornets don't know how to use Kai Jones, that Kai Jones is not a center. They're very adamant about that. Kai Jones is not a center. Okay. Some of them will go so far as to say that Kai Jones is a guard. He's not even a power forward. He's not even a forward. He's a guard, which are very interesting. But I think if you look at those and then you look at how Kai Jones plays when he's given the opportunity, I mean, I kind of think that Kai Jones feels a little bit like that too, that maybe he's playing
100%.
Way out of position. And I think that's part of the issue, is that he's being asked to fill a role that his body type would suggest he could fill, and one where he's been given an opportunity to solidify a roster spot with the Charlotte Hornets, not with the Greensboro Swarm, but with the Charlotte Hornets. And he's unable to he can't help himself that he wants to be something that I don't think that any of the coaches here or anywhere else, honestly, would project him out to be. And that's a big problem.
All right, thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen today. Make your second listen game-to-game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result, especially during the regular season. Of course, Locked On Game-to-Game covers every game from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game-to-Game on Locked On NBA, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Same for us, by the way. Go check out Doug's Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and text him, subtext Doug. Tell the people how they can reach you.
Join subtext.com/Locked On Hornets. Now is the time. Get signed up. 14-day free trial. You basically get 1v1 access to me via text. I'm texting out rumors. I'm texting out things that are happening. As we get closer to training camp, things are going to heat up. So definitely join now. Get started. Join subtext.com/Locked On Hornets. Get all my depraved Hornets thoughts.
All right. Yeah, that sounds what a fantastic pitch that was. Make sure you go check that out. All right. Thanks for joining us, making us your first listen. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.